This clip is about task analysis versus instructional analysis, and this is the book that we're going to take this particular clip from. There are other books that we use the same kind of procedural model of instructional design. So this part of the instructional design it's been fairly consistent over the years. This is another book. This is by Dick and Carey and Carey. The Dick and Carey model has been in operation since 1978. This is a more recent novel that builds on Gagnier's Event of Instruction from 1964 by Smith and Reagan. But basically, we're all talking about the same kind of instructional design model. When you use the term instructional design, that's what we're talking about. Now, we assume that at this point in your instructional design process, you have done a needs assessment. Needs assessment is a needs analysis, a contextual analysis, a problem analysis. You've looked at the different types of needs, felt needs, so on. They're all listed in Chapter 8 of this particular book. So when I make reference to a book, or the textbook, this is the book I'm talking about. Now, the covers for these books might change, depending on what semester you're taking this course in. But we're going to talk in this clip about task analysis for a minute, and how it's different a little bit from instructional analysis. If we look at the where it fits within the entire instructional design process, according to these books, because there are other kinds of instructional design maps. Some are circular, some go one way. The Syracuse model kind of looks like a train set, path through the woods. Some are mazes. This one is very linear from top to bottom. Okay, and as you can see, you've got needs analysis at the top, start, then needs analysis, then task analysis, and instructional analysis. So what is the difference between a task analysis and an instructional analysis? And that's sort of what we're going to talk about. Essentially, a task analysis is for experts. What do experts do? Now, they're a knowledge engineer, for example, get on the telephone, talk to an expert in an area, and ask them what they do step by step by step by step. Okay? Same with doing a task analysis. You collect data using archival data. You might use observation in order to watch the worker do the job, and then take notes as the procedures go. You might ask their opinions. You might collect all kinds of data in order to find out what the tasks are that are being done. Okay? So I think that there's a nice little part to what kinds of inputs, those are called inputs, that we would see in a task analysis. And so we'll just take a look at that now. You see the way that the chart looks? Now, when you're generating your assignment, this part of the assignment, which will come to me, by the way, not in bits, but you'll put it together for your position paper. So your position paper will have the needs analysis, and you'll have a needs assessment, problem assessment, contextual assessment, all that stuff done. And then you will start to look at the task analysis and how you, as the expert, would fashion your do it yourself, so to speak, or someone that you know to be an expert would do it themselves. You put the inputs along the left-hand side all the way down. This is an example. This is a student product. Describe the stowage requirements of life rafts on board installations. Okay, that's the input. Here's another input. Describe the construction characteristics and markings of life rafts. Okay, so let's look at an action then in the next column. Select PowerPoint to explain the stowage requirements to the students. Okay. Another action would be select visual aid to point out the characteristics and markings of life rafts. Okay. These are particular life rafts, by the way. They're very ancient life rafts. Students will be able to discuss the stowage requirements of life rafts. That's an output. So you want to have the three columns to show for each task the input, the action you're going to do as a result of what the input is, and the output. Now, what kinds of inputs are you concerned about? Well, on page 35, you can see that Seals and Glasgow talk about 4 different types of inputs that I think are worth considering. First are cues that prompt the performance. The second kind are resources that you're used during performance. The third is the organizational inputs affecting performance. And the fourth is the environmental conditions affecting performance. So you can read through that, and that will help you to sort out what it is you have to do for task analysis. Okay, so that's this chapter does a very good job of it. Here's another, on page 39, you can see that there's a, you can see an example of, very simple example for photography with the input, the action, and the output. Further on in the chapter, you can see all the kinds of throughout pages 40 and onward, you can see how they have outlined the kinds of data or methods, instruments you would use to collect data for task analysis. All right, now let's have a look at here on the answers, in the answer section in page 54 is kind of interesting because you can see the input, action, output, and it shows lines with arrowheads showing the direction that there is from one output, it leads to the next input, okay? Now, you know, these things sometimes occur together, so that you might present them with an input, action, output, and stop the event there. Say, this is what I do, and then some of them might have this recurring kind of iteration throughout the entire task analysis. Okay. So the task analysis will start like this. Now, and this is what the expert does. The next step that we do is called an instructional analysis. Now this goes together, this stage, the instructional analysis, is when you're trying to put together your learning objectives or learning outcomes. So you've got tasks. Okay, first I'm going to, in order to bake a cake, let's say I'm going to get the ingredients. Then I'm going to, if there's, lay them out on the table, get bowls, start to mix them, and so on. All these would be tasks that we'd have to do. But when you teach them, you may not teach them that way that the expert is telling you that he does them. In fact, you might want to start with Gagné or these guys. The way they all start and the way we all start in instructional design is by distinguishing. We call it discrimination learning. I don't like the word, but psychologists also call it a discriminatory ability to discriminate or characterize, classify, identify, separate one thing from another. You know, flour and icing sugar. They look the same, but they're not the same kind of thing, okay? So you might teach that in your baking class, for example. You're trying to show differences and distinguishing characteristics. So your instructional analysis might be an input, action, output, starting way back on distinguishing some foods from other foods, or some things that go together well from others, for example. Then the next stage would be to describe the concepts, and we'll talk about how to write objectives based on cognitive domain, predominantly the cognitive domain in this course, and the kinds of intellectual skills, verbal information learning, and cognitive strategy instruction objectives that we would write within that domain, okay? How they're taught is something quite different, and some students have trouble with that sometimes, is that no, when we're writing objectives and we're creating an instructional analysis like this from our task analysis, we are trying to establish what is to be taught. What is to be taught, not how it's going to be taught. So I'm I'm concerned with your position paper. In your position paper, you will be writing a rationale. You will be showing something about your, back here on your task analysis, right? And then you write your objectives, maybe starting right down at the bottom, in this case about life rafts, and distinguishing Viking life rafts from other kinds of life rafts that are in large ocean liners from little tiny boats, for example, or whatever, okay? So you're going to, all those will be out there, and when you come to put your objectives together, this is the way you'll start to think about arranging your learning objectives from the bottom of the task analysis upwards, let's say, okay? Or you might start in the middle, or you might collect the tasks and say, these tasks would make a good objective. If the tasks are too small, by the way, or menial, or too easy to do, that's the other thing I want to just talk a little bit about. Sometimes people think that this is really a lesson plan, okay? Instructional design is not making a lesson plan. This course is for your below average students, or students who have every single semester have the same problems, or every time around you find that if you've got new hires, new employees, you'll find that they seem to always have the same problems. Well, this instructional design product you're going to make is something they can take home and do on their own. Practice. So that when they come to, even to the workshop training, they'll be more enlightened, as it were, okay? It's not a simply lesson plan. Lesson planning, you do not need instructional design. This comes out of the Army and the Navy, military, where you have, in the same target audience, you have people who can't read with college students in the same classroom. So some have to go away and practice things on their own, like how to read in a particular language. You may have people from overseas or from away who are, don't speak the same language, the language that you're teaching in. If so, then they will need some extra supports in order for them to be able to perform their job well, okay? Okay, so instructional analysis, this is the way to build that. This slide now shows the symbols that we use in developing either we can use it for the task analysis and for the instructional analysis. And we only need a few of the symbols. We're not talking about a lot of different symbols. What we got there is the start. That's we call a terminal symbol. So you start somewhere and you end somewhere. It doesn't go on and on like I'm going on and on right now about some piece of information. No, you have a start and you have an end, okay? And that should show up on your chart. Now, there is very excellent charting software out there. You can even get a 30-day copy of something without paying for it. But I would recommend that if you are an instructional designer, say here at DELTS or College of North Atlantic or in Ontario or wherever you are, then you would ask your organization to purchase good flowcharting software. University College there, Cape Breton University now, they used to use Inspiration. I used to use SmartDraw, but there are lots of more sophisticated ones where it's simply dragging and dropping the symbols across onto the interface and dropping them and then putting arrows. So you can see here start, then we've got a process, which is the box, and then we've got a circle. These triangles are important because they are decisions, Okay, and you see that this particular example shows the decisions. Either I'm going to do the PowerPoint or some kind of practical exercise, and that might be a decision for the instructor to make. That's the other thing about instructional design. Don't think of yourself as the deliverer or the facilitator of the instruction. Okay, don't think of yourself as the teacher. You are developing instruction for someone else. Just like these guys in the studio today, they're helping me develop instructional materials for you out there to essentially learn from, okay? Right. And so you can see how this is an interesting one here where the arrow comes up and then comes right across and back into it. That's a feedback loop. Okay, that may be feedback. So or it may be an algorithm. For example, if someone doesn't master a certain objective, then they would go back and redo it or do a different, they would be iterated to another, remediated to a different objective. Right? So that's the basis of the two things I wanted to talk about. Task analysis, which is for experts. Instructional analysis, which is essentially for the learners and about how the learners would proceed through the instruction. Okay, and we'll leave it at that.